The town of Edgewood was small and quiet, nestled deep in the mountains. It was the kind of place where everyone knew everyone, and rumors traveled faster than the winds on a chilly autumn evening. The people who lived there were tough, each one hardened by the difficult life they led. Most of them worked in the mines, some in the forests, while others worked at the local inn. It was a place where you had to be strong to survive, and where kindness was a rare, often misunderstood thing. Mary had only been living in Edgewood for a few weeks. She came from a nearby town, searching for work and a fresh start. It wasn't easy to find a place in a community like this. People stared at her when she walked by, whispering behind her back. She was used to it, though. Her weight had always made her an easy target for cruel jokes and harsh words. But she wasn't here to make friends, she was here to work. Her job was at the town's inn. It was a modest building with a large hearth in the center of the main room and small wooden tables scattered around. The innkeeper, Mr. Potter, was an older man with a quick temper and a sharp tongue. He didn't treat Mary with much kindness, but he paid her enough to get by. Most days she cleaned rooms, washed dishes, and helped prepare meals. She didn't mind the work. It kept her busy, and it was better than sitting at home all day doing nothing. One chilly afternoon, as Mary was scrubbing a table, Mr. Potter walked in, a sly grin on his face. "Mary," he said, his voice sharp, "I've got a task for you." Mary looked up, wiping her hands on her apron. "What is it, Mr. Potter?" "You'll be helping a guest today," he said, his grin widening. "One of the locals needs a bath, and you're the one who's going to give it to him." Mary raised an eyebrow. "A bath?" "Yes," he said, his tone casual. "But not just any bath. This one's a bit more special." Mary wasn't sure what he meant, but she didn't ask. The innkeeper wasn't the kind of man to explain himself. "Who is it?" she asked instead. "Big John," Mr. Potter replied, his voice filled with amusement. "The mountain man." Mary froze. "Big John?" Everyone in town knew who Big John was. He was a giant of a man, a recluse who lived in the mountains. He was covered in dirt and grime most of the time, and the townspeople often joked that he was too stubborn to ever take a bath. He didn't come into town often, and when he did, people whispered about him behind his back. The innkeeper must have noticed her hesitation because his grin grew wider. "Don't worry, Mary, it's just a joke. You'll have him cleaned up in no time." "But why me?" Mary asked, suddenly feeling a wave of anxiety wash over her. "Because you're the only one around here who's not afraid to get your hands dirty," Mr. Potter said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "And besides, you could use the practice." Mary didn't respond. She wasn't sure if he was being serious or not, but she knew she didn't have a choice. If she wanted to keep her job, she had to do it. So with a deep breath, she nodded. Later that day, she went to the back of the inn where Big John was waiting. The sight of him made her heart race. He was taller than she had imagined, towering over her with broad shoulders and rough hands. His face was rugged, his beard long and wild, and his clothes looked like they hadn't been washed in weeks. He didn't say a word when she approached him, but he gave her a nod. Mary tried not to stare at him as she set up the water for his bath. She filled the large tub in the corner of the room with hot water, the steam rising into the air. She wasn't sure what to say to him. The only thing she knew about Big John was what the people in town said. He was a quiet man, but everyone who'd ever tried to get close to him quickly learned that he preferred to keep to himself. The silence between them was thick, and Mary couldn't help but feel nervous. She had never been in a room with a man like this before, and she certainly had never given anyone a bath. But as she moved around the room, preparing everything, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched. She glanced up at Big John, who was standing by the window, staring out into the distance. He didn't seem angry or impatient, but there was something about the way he held himself that made her nervous. Maybe it was his size, or maybe it was the way the room seemed to shrink whenever he moved, but she didn't have time to dwell on it. She had a job to do. Mary tried to make herself as comfortable as possible, although the awkwardness in the air was suffocating. She turned toward the tub, gesturing for him to come closer. "The water's ready," she said, her voice shaky. Big John didn't respond. He simply walked over to the tub and stood there, staring at it for a moment before glancing at Mary. She was still standing by the water, unsure of what to do next. She had no experience with this kind of thing, and her heart was pounding in her chest. After what felt like an eternity, Big John spoke, his voice low and gravelly. I appreciate you doing this, he said, his words catching Mary off guard. She froze. His first words weren't what she expected. She thought he would be rude, perhaps even angry, but instead he sounded grateful. Mary blinked, unsure of how to respond. It's no trouble, she managed, though her voice trembled. She quickly busied herself with adjusting the water temperature, trying to hide the fact that her heart was racing. Big John's gaze remained steady on her, his eyes softening just slightly. Not many people would do this, he said quietly, almost as if to himself. Most folks would just laugh. Mary's mind raced. Was he talking about her? Was he talking about the others in town who had treated him like a joke? She felt a pang of sympathy for him. The town had never been kind to Big John, and she had never really thought about it before. But hearing his words now, she began to see him in a different light. As she helped him into the water, she was aware of the strange bond forming between them. Something unspoken, something neither of them could fully explain. And for the first time since coming to Edgewood, Mary didn't feel judged. She didn't feel like the town was looking at her with disdain. Big John was silent for a long moment, and then he spoke again, his voice quieter this time. "Thank you for not laughing," he said. Mary's heart skipped a beat. It was simple, but it meant more than anything. His words made her freeze, not because she was afraid, but because for the first time someone had acknowledged her kindness without mockery. She had been used to people making fun of her, but Big John, he had seen something in her that no one else had, and that realization hit her like a wave. She wasn't just the girl in the inn. She wasn't just the one who had been bullied or laughed at. She was a person, someone capable of kindness, capable of making a difference, even to someone like Big John. As she helped him with the bath, the silence between them felt less heavy. For a brief moment, they shared something that no one in the town would ever understand. And for Mary, that moment was worth more than any cruel joke could ever be. She had been ordered to bathe him as a joke, but in that moment she realized that kindness had the power to change everything. Mary woke up the next morning feeling a mixture of emotions. The events of the day before weighed heavily on her mind. Helping Big John bathe had been uncomfortable at first, but his words had stayed with her. "Thank you for not laughing," they echoed in her mind, and she couldn't shake the feeling that she had done something important, something that had changed her in ways she didn't fully understand. It wasn't just about Big John. Her whole perspective on the town, on herself, was shifting. Mary had always struggled with her weight, her appearance, and the way people saw her. She had spent most of her life being the subject of cruel jokes and whispers. But when she looked at Big John, she didn't see a mountain man who was dirty and rough. She saw a man who had been discarded by society, left to live alone in the mountains, judged for his size and his silence. Mary had been cruelly judged too, but now she saw the depth of it. She began to feel sympathy for Big John, and at the same time something shifted inside her. She realized that she had never truly stood up for herself, not in the way that mattered. But Big John's gratitude made her think, if she could be kind to him, why couldn't she do the same for herself? The next few days at the inn felt different. Mary moved through her tasks with more purpose. Her shoulders held a little higher, her steps a little bolder. She started to ignore the whispers of the townsfolk, the ones that judged her for her appearance or the way she worked. She knew she was capable of more than they realized. But it wasn't just the people in the town who had been cruel. Mary had also been cruel to herself. For years she had believed the lies that people told her. She wasn't good enough, she was too fat, too awkward, too shy. The cruelty she had faced had built a wall around her, making it hard for her to see her own worth. But now, standing tall as she worked in the inn, she realized she didn't have to live in that shadow anymore. One afternoon, Mr. Potter came into the inn, looking a little more irritable than usual. He was always gruff, but today he seemed on edge. Mary didn't want to ask him what was bothering him, but she couldn't help it. The curiosity was eating away at her. "Is everything all right, Mr. Potter?" she asked as she dusted the tables, her voice careful. "Everything's fine," he snapped, then paused, his face hardening. "It's just that blasted Big John. He's been causing a scene." Mary froze for a moment. "Big John? What happened?" "He's been coming into town every day this week. And now he's asking for food, asking for things he doesn't deserve. I don't know what's gotten into him, but I want him out of here." Mary's heart sank. She didn't want to get involved in any more drama, especially with Big John. But she couldn't help but feel protective of him, even though she didn't know why. She had seen the way he was treated, and now it seemed like everyone was turning on him again. "I don't think he's causing trouble on purpose," Mary said, her voice steady but kind. "Maybe he just needs some help," Mr. Potter scoffed. "Help? He's just a mountain man trying to take advantage of everyone. You don't know him like I do." Mary didn't respond immediately. She knew she couldn't change Mr. Potter's mind, but she also knew she couldn't sit idly by while Big John was being mistreated. She had seen the way he looked at her when she helped him with his bath. He wasn't the angry, rude man people made him out to be. He was just a man who had been left behind. That evening, after her chores were done, Mary decided to go see Big John. She didn't know why she felt so compelled to help him, but she couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. As she walked through the cold evening air, the sky above her dark and heavy with clouds, she thought about the kindness he had shown her. He didn't have to thank her for giving him a bath, but he did. And that had changed her in ways she couldn't explain. When Mary reached the small cabin where Big John lived, she knocked on the door. She didn't expect him to answer, but after a moment she heard footsteps. The door creaked open, and there he was, Big John, looking just as rugged and wild as he had when she first met him. "What are you doing here?" he asked, his voice gruff but not unfriendly. Mary hesitated for a moment, unsure of what to say. She had come here to help him, but she didn't know how. "I heard that things weren't going well in town," she said carefully. "I just wanted to make sure you're all right." Big John didn't respond immediately. He stood in the doorway, his arms crossed over his chest, his eyes narrowing as if trying to figure out her intentions. But then he stepped aside and motioned for her to come in. Mary entered the small cabin, feeling a bit out of place. The room was sparse, with a few pieces of furniture and a large stone fireplace. There was a faint smell of wood smoke in the air, and the only light came from the flickering fire. It was quiet, almost too quiet. Big John sat down by the fire and gestured for her to take a seat. "What do you want from me?" he asked, his voice low. Mary looked at him, unsure of how to answer. "I don't want anything," she said softly. "I just wanted to check on you. I know how people treat you, and I don't think it's right." Big John's face softened for a moment, though the hardness never completely left his eyes. "You don't know me," he said quietly. "I know what it's like to be judged," Mary replied, her voice steady. "To be looked at like you don't belong. But that's not who you are. I know you're not some savage or monster. You're a man, just like everyone else." Big John looked at her for a long moment, his gaze searching her face. For a second, it felt like time stood still between them. Then with a sigh, he looked down at the floor. "You don't know the half of it," he murmured. Mary didn't know what else to say, so she just sat there with him in silence, the crackling of the fire the only sound in the room. As the night grew colder, she realized that what she had done for Big John wasn't just about helping him. It was about helping herself, too. For the first time in a long time, Mary felt like she had done something meaningful. She had chosen kindness over judgment, and it had made all the difference. Maybe it wasn't the end of her journey, but it was a step in the right direction. Big John's gratitude and her own sense of strength had opened something inside her that she had buried for years. It was a reminder that kindness towards others and herself had the power to heal, even the most broken of hearts, and in that moment, with the warmth of the fire surrounding them, Mary realized that maybe, just maybe, she wasn't as alone as she had once believed.